Good afternoon, everybody. So hello and welcome. Right. So today, the webinar is entitled Cognitive Ability and Personality at Work, right? Comprehensive insights for key talent decisions. So this webinar is brought to you by Optimal Consulting Group in partnership with Hogan Assessments. Now, organizations have long used cognitive ability tests to determine whether a person has the intelligence to make sound decisions. However, is this alone sufficient to predict workplace effectiveness? So in today's session, we will explore the science-backed answer to this question. Our speaker will share research on how combining insights from both cognitive ability and personality can enhance key talent decisions. My name is Jeannie. I'm the principal consultant at Optimal Consulting Group, and I will be your host today. So joining me are our partners from Hogan Assessments, Asia Pacific. So I have Crystal. Hi, Crystal. Crystal Patterson, Managing Director. Anne Marie, she's not joining us today, but I also have Nicole. Sorry, Nicole, I can't see you on my screen. Wave. Yeah, Senior Consultant, International Distributors. Also with me are some of our colleagues, Optimal Consulting, who are actually based in Kuala Lumpur. I am based in Kuala Lumpur, so some of my colleagues from Singapore and as well as from Optimal Hong Kong and Optimal Shanghai. And of course, our speaker from Hogan Assessments, Dr. Georgi Yankov, Senior Scientist of Assessment Innovation. So before I share with you the background of Georgi, whilst he is sipping his coffee, he's based in Berlin, so it's a very early morning for him. So thank you again, Georgi, for joining us. So before I introduce and invite Georgi to speak, let me just start by introducing a little bit about Optimal Consulting. So as most of you would know, Optimal Consulting began working with our first clients in Singapore since August 2002, right? Since then, we have expanded our presence across Asia with offices in Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Tokyo. We support both multinational and Asia-based organizations across the region and beyond. It's especially wonderful to see so many familiar names. I haven't seen a lot of faces yet, but I do see quite a lot of familiar names. Thank you for the trust and partnership you have shown us over the years, and we truly appreciate it and look forward to strengthening these relationships further. Now, let me introduce Hogan Assessments next, right? So Hogan Assessments was founded in 1987 by Doctors Bob and Joyce Hogan. Since then, the organization has assessed over 11 million working adults worldwide, deliver assessments in 54 languages across more than 50 countries, built the industry's largest archive of work-related personality research, supported by extensive validation studies, and certify more than 50,000 users globally. I'm sure quite a few of us here have actually contributed to that number as well. Thank you, and thank you to Hogan Assessments, who has actually continually partnered us even the journey so far. Now, our speaker today, Dr. Georgi Yankov. So Georgi himself, he specializes in psychometrics, personality psychology, and data science. So Georgi has developed advanced assessments and AI-driven tools to evaluate personality, intelligence, and behavioral skills, including systems that outperform human evaluators. Previously a principal research scientist at DDI, he has published extensively in leading journals, authored books on personality psychology, and presented at major industry conferences. He holds a PhD in industrial organizational psychology from Bowling Green State University and has a multidisciplinary academic background in psychology and philosophy. Wow, the PNP. So, Georgi, welcome. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Very, very excited to hear
Thank
about
you.
some of the data here. But before I hand the mic over to you, let me just very quickly go through some housekeeping rules so that we can just focus on your presentation in a bit. So to everybody during the presentation, appreciate if you can remain muted during the presentation, myself included. Now, if you have any questions, do submit them via the chat box, or I guess the chat box will be actually the best because then I will be able to compile them, and I will try to make sure that as many of these are addressed during our Q&A session after the presentation. Presentation is actually about 35 minutes. Yeah, Yogi has actually allowed a lot of time for Q&A, so we're going to try to address as many as questions as possible. Also, now after the webinar, you will receive an email with the brochure, contact details, right? So that if you need to have any other questions and all those, we would be happy to actually follow up on those as well. Okay, I think we're good for you, Georgi. Love to hear what you would want. Tell us, is it important to have cognitive ability? Is that the only determining factor? Georgi, over to you.
Thank you. As always, in psychology, the answer is it depends. So for you to understand why it depends, let me share my presentation and start presenting. So let me know if you see the presentation. You do? Yes. Can you hear me? All right. All right. So today, we are talking about cognitive ability and personality at work, and a good number of insights about how they relate, and especially with reference to talent decisions at the workplace. I'm happy to speak to you. I spoke a month ago in Montenegro, last week in Paris. So it has been about time to talk to Asia audience. And I know this topic is very interesting for you and actually very interesting for me. I hope you will enjoy my talk. And the talk is structured in 5 parts. First, we are going to talk more broadly about intelligence and make sure we understand what we are talking about. Then we will go to the 5-factor model of personality and its relationship to cognitive ability. Then we will go to the dark side of personality and cognitive ability. Um, before we finish with questions and answers, for which I encourage you to start thinking about your questions and submitting them now. I will be happy to answer all your questions. I will talk about predicting job performance, both from cognitive ability and personality side, and why we um, aim for that prediction to be optimal, and no pun intended with optimal in hosting the webinar. So without further ado, let's start. So what do we see here? We see something appetizing. It's still very early in the morning for me. I'm drinking coffee and I'm doing fasted session, so I won't eat breakfast. So this starts to look, tasty to me. What you see is what? It is a vinaigrette and some salad. And years ago, when I started my research on my dissertation is the interaction between cognitive ability and personality for faking, prediction of faking on personality tests. I was reading research and I found this interesting metaphor. They said cognitive ability and personality are like oil and vinegar. They mix, uh, they can be mixed, you can get vinaigrette, but actually what happens is they split quickly, they separate. And in this picture, you see the same salad, but the oil is on the top, and the vinegar is on the bottom. And that's a good metaphor to understand the relationship between personality and cognitive ability. They want to mix, they might mix, but they split fast. And it seems like they are working on their own. Um, just like in the salad, you will taste the vinaigrette, but you will taste the oil and the vinegar separately. And that brings me to the main argument of the talk, is that they work on their own and in combination for the selection of candidates in multiple types of job. So that combination is valid for many types of jobs, let's say all types of jobs, and they work to optimally predict their performance on the job. So, which means they contribute to predicting job performance on their own, but if we use them together, we optimally predict it. So we increase the prediction. It has incremental effect, each of them over the other one. And both are needed to assess for selecting versatile leaders. Um, when I was screened for my internship at Hogan many years ago, I did take the HBRI, our Hogan Business Reasoning Inventory, and I did take the 3 Hogan assessments, and they did take into account the scores on the HBRI. Um, so this has been our philosophy for many years for the selection of talented candidates to combine cognitive ability assessment with personality. Now, let's talk some general rules about intelligence, some housekeeping, and some of the myths to unravel. I think it is an Asian um, thinking and kind of a story that one person was in the mountain and they asked, they saw someone, they were lost, and they asked someone, what is the right way to go to the top? Um, and that person told them, you are on the wrong way. And that was very helpful because if you know you're on the wrong way, you're more likely to find the right way. But notably, they were not told take this way. So you have to discover the right way. So I will try with this slide to help you understand how to think about intelligence, and I'm sure you will find out the right way. First of all, we need to um, make sure we understand the difference between these 3 um, terms: intelligence, IQ, and cognitive ability. Why am I talking about cognitive abilities in this presentation? When people on the street, your clients, talk about intelligence, and everyone says, my IQ is higher than someone else's IQ. So it's a lot of 3 things, but what's the relationship? So let's start from history. Initially, the research is about intelligence and will be always about intelligence, because the first test that um, Binet developed in France for the selection, actually, it was to place children in programs for mm, slow. He wanted to separate the children that needed special attention for their development and their education. So he called this an intelligence test. and they were exploring intelligence. And Sir Francis Galton, who was follower of Darwin, also talked about intelligence. So the term scientifically is intelligence. It's correct to talk about intelligence. And Binet made a test based on many parts, many different tasks to do um, to test your intelligence. Think about associations or puzzles or how many words can you say for 1 minute that start with the letter P, or how many combinations of words and sorry, letters and numbers you can remember and can repeat. So there are various tasks to measure your intelligence, and it's like he put them all together in this test, but you cannot report on each of them. You can, but you cannot compare people easily. So he came up with this intelligence quotient, the one score that conveys your intelligence. And that still is the case. Each cognitive tests around the world do have one score, and usually it is normed in percentiles, in standard deviations, so you can compare people with that score. However, recent, not so recent, maybe let's say 30, 40 years ago, science understood that it is not appropriate to overemphasize the IQ score because the theories of intelligence developed, and we know we have multiple intelligences now. We have fluid intelligence, we have crystallized intelligence, we have working memory, we have processing speed. They are different, as we say, cognitive abilities. So think of cognitive abilities as different types of intelligences. And it was stressed by the scientists. Let's move away from this one term because it is too prescriptive, too mm, not appropriate for each person's different setup of cognitive abilities. And the research now talks about cognitive abilities. It's synonymous with intelligence, but it's not. Um, I prefer to talk about cognitive abilities in this talk, um, and especially with relationship with HBRI, which has two um, cognitive abilities to explore, quantitative and qualitative. All right. So next myth to unravel is the higher, the better. Now, many people think the higher your intelligence, cognitive abilities are, that's great. We want to hire those people. Let's hire the nuclear scientists, the people who have an IQ of 130 and above. They say some American presidents had 135, 140. I won't mention names. Maybe some of them had lower. I've seen in the museum of the records of the Senate in DC, the notebooks, the grade books of some American presidents. Some of them we still remember. They were not very bright, um, but we are not them, and we have to hire employees for specific jobs. So each job has a good range that we were looking at. And one of my advisors in the past told me something very fascinating I want to share with you. He said, it is great to have leaders who are not too intelligent. And I said, why? Because if they're too intelligent, if they have an IQ of 130, which is like two standard deviations above the average in the population, they tend to express themselves very complex. And that could be problem to engage people who are not as highly intelligent, who are, let's say, one standard deviation below the mean at 85. The same goes with people who are leaders who are around 110. They use language because intelligence is a factor of what kind of how complex your language is. That is not engaging for the very intellectual workforce. So the average and a slightly higher than average intelligence in terms of IQ is a good number for many jobs, I would say. Now, this is I know there would be questions about this, so let's start with some of the myths to unravel. Many people think you can fake a personality test, but not an intelligence test. Now, that is also not true. My dissertation and research before has shown that personality tests cannot be faked, especially um, mm, in our understanding of personality at Hogan. We understand it in the um, difference between identity and reputation, and we know that people the goal is to manage your reputation. And in that case, faking matters not because, in a way, to do to manage our reputation, we always have to display behaviors that are socially desirable, and faking does not lead us anywhere because faking is exactly that idea that I want to show something that is not true. However, we do not say you do not mean your reputation. You mean it because it will get you to success in life. And life, the biggest measure of success in life is your career, as our founder Robert Hogan says. Therefore, if you're self-aware and manage your personality, well, you don't need to fake because you will be successful. So with intelligence tests, people think it's not possible to fake. However, the opposite is true. It's possible. In personality tests, there is no right answer, as you know, but in intelligence tests, there are right answers. There is a scoring key, and we see this person made a mistake. This question on this question, they got it right. So technically, you can break the test if you know the answers. And cheating is very common in intelligence tests, especially now with AI. If you do not lock people's screens, um, they might try to export the question to AI chatbot or another um, mm, application to, or maybe call someone if you don't see them, if it's not proctored in live, and get an answer, the answer. So it's much more vulnerable to cheating. However, again, what will happen if you cheat at the interview for the job? You will, or when we compare you to your resume. So cheating is never a solution, and a well-constructed selection system will be fine. Even with these candidates, they would not go further. Um, the final myth to unravel is personality changes, whereas cognitive ability does not change. Now, meta-analysis show personality does not change much. Changes slowly, maybe half standard deviation over all the life course, especially for neuroticism, which is the big five factor that is most genetic. And cognitive ability does not change. That is also wrong. It does, especially the ability around working memory. We know with older people, it just slows down naturally, or processing speed. they do have a lot of wisdom that they gathered from their life. So they accumulated what we say crystallized intelligence, that facts, knowledge about life, people, events, a lot of technical knowledge from their jobs. But it's just that the way they access it in their brain is slower because there is aging process. Their neurons are not interacting as quickly as when they were in their 20s. So it does decline. Some cognitive abilities decline over age. Others stay mostly stable, crystallized intelligence stays, but fluid starts to go down. So these are all myths. And mm, also, there is an additional one I want to share. Intelligence is actual ability, whereas personality is not ability. But that's again not true because personality is determining how you use your abilities. So um, again, think about the vinegar and the oil. They together have to make vinaigrette. You do not want only oil or only vinegar in your salad. Maybe some of you want, but I think most of you do not. Now, cognitive ability is a very practical thing. Um, one of the best definitions of cognitive ability comes from Wechsler. David Wechsler did something like Binet did in France. Like 30 years later, he did it. He created one of the best tests of cognitive ability. It's called the Wechsler scales. I was part of it, standardization in Bulgaria many years ago. So I had to work with the data of the children from 6 to 16 years of age. So I saw the progression of how their cognitive abilities changed when they grew up. Um, but he did not say intelligence is following some very complicated definition. He says it is the global ability, capacity to act purposefully, to think rationally, and deal effectively with the environment. So, dealing effectively with the environment means usually solving problems, the second definition. And that's exactly the definition that our founder Robert Hogan synthesized, the ability to reflect on one's performance. So he extended what Wexler said. It's not just dealing effectively, but reflecting on how you work with the environment, with the problems, with your like situations, and identify problems and what inhibits your performance to solve them. So it's a lot of self-awareness in this definition. So this has a relationship with how people developed in evolution in society. They had to forecast events that would happen in their environment. Like the farmers, they had to know when the Nile River in Africa would be flooding, so they can not. They probably have to put the rice then, so it starts growing. But most often, uh, it's not when knowing when a pattern will happen. It's knowing when it won't happen, so you do not do the wrong thing. So um, it is much more useful to know when not to apply association between events than to apply them. So um, that helped our ancestors solve a very wide range of problems effectively. So forecasting events, recognizing when the forecast will happen or not happen, and making decisions based on these forecasts. Because based on these decisions, you can act on them and actually change things. So the point of intelligence and cognitive abilities is for us to use them to solve problems and live our lives effectively. It's not the point of comparing ourselves who is higher or not. Um, all right, so this was this section, and now let's go directly to the Hogan Business Reasoning Inventory. It's our instrument that measures um, um, intelligence and reasoning. It is and specifically designed to predict occupational success, unlike some other intelligence tests, which are more general, especially what I mentioned, the Stanford Binet test or the Wechsler scales. They are tests for um, very, very authoritative tests, but they are usually given to children um, or young adults, and their questions are not created for workplace use, or as we call in IO psychology, they are not frame of reference to the job, and whereas our questions are, and they are used for screening candidates, career and leadership development. So if you have not ever used an intelligence test in your HR career, you can start with HBRI with the most basic use, which is for selection, screening, selection, but you can also use it if you have managers who you want to develop, high potentials that you want to um, mm, develop and know their reasoning or cognitive style, as our report uh, gives, and use that reasoning style to um, help them exploit their strengths and limit their weaknesses. So our tests identify helps us understand identify who is good at finding and solving problems, and again, real world problem solving, not problems like how many words you can tell me for 1 minute that starts with the letter P. That is not a real world problem. And it many people who are very highly intelligent might not be practically intelligent. And so what is the use of them? Um, Now, our test has two cognitive abilities. Now, it's probably clear to you. We talk about intelligence, but we actually specifically measure cognitive abilities, qualitative and quantitative reasoning. So, qualitative reasoning in HBRI is using graphical information, logic, and verbal information for solving problems, whereas quantitative is more about mathematics, numerical reasoning, special knowledge, if you understand more complex associations, which are related to more of scientific thinking. So this is a very common division of cognitive abilities, qualitative and quantitative. Uh, and the report gives you the overall score, just like all intelligence tests give you an overall score and gives you score for qualitative, quantitative, and um, the added benefit that other tests don't have, or some have, but it's not based on cognitive abilities so clearly as our test. Four cognitive styles: expedient, contextual, analytical, or critical thinker. And we're gonna they're structured on a grid, 2 by 2, and depending on your scores on quantitative and qualitative, you can be one of the four styles, and we'll see an example later in the presentation. But we need to mm, proceed with now the very essence of the relationship between the five-factor model, or as people call them, the big five, and cognitive ability. What do we know from science about this relationship? Is there even a relationship? So, before I show you some data, the science says um, that there should be relationship. Uh, one theory is the compensation theory, and we see this often. People with higher conscientiousness might actually have lower um, intelligence scores because they knew that they since school they know because they're not as bright as their schoolmates. They will invest more into studying hard. And you probably had in your school days a classmate who was able to do their homework in the break before class and still get a very good grade. And you spent 3 hours at home the same homework and you did not do great. So but you invested the time because you know you you learn these problems and you are more likely to have higher grades. So it pays off to be diligent, but only that much. And second theory is the investment theory, which claims that individuals, their individual differences in how we um, invest our cognitive ability. So we use our intelligence to acquire more knowledge over time. So if I am quick to see associations between things and think fast, get fast, the ideas come fast to my mind, then over time I'm going to accumulate more knowledge because I'm going to be um understanding things faster, maybe reading books faster, um, and again, what is the relationship to personality? Well, some personality traits like openness, if I really need to understand things, if I feel the urge to know things, if I'm nervous, they can either help this um, storage of knowledge or they can prevent it. Like if I need to understand everything, I go and buy the manual to understand it. If I don't, maybe I watch a YouTube video just to repeat what people did, and I solve my problem by repeating what people did. But if I'm a scientist and I really need to understand things, I will read the manual. And overall, the meta-analysis, and that's what I found in my dissertation, and it's been repeated more and more, and even in this publication with our Chief Science Officer Ryan Sherman and Adrian Furnham, very distinguished psychologist in the UK, they show that usually intelligence relates negatively with conscientiousness or prudence in Hogan's um, nomology, uh, naming convention of the Big Five, and with anxiety. So stress during test taking, as you know, is not helpful to your test results, grades, and positive relationship with openness. If I'm open to experience, if I want to um, know things. But as you know, openness has is one of the most problematic big five um, mm, factors, and that's why Bob Hogan separated it into two factors: inquisitive and learning approach. And our data shows that it was very wise for him to do that, and you can see. But let's first go to ambition and sociability. Um, in the HPI, in the Hogan Personality Inventory, uh, we separate extroversion into these two parts: ambition, which is the leadership part, and sociability, which is more of the extroversion, pure extroversion, gregariousness, being among people, being in parties with crowds, and being entertaining for them. Because we do that distinction, we actually see some relationship with ambition, which is stronger than sociability. Whereas in research, in meta-analysis, usually there is not much relationship with extroversion. But because we split them, we see now the benefit of intelligence for leadership. There is some connection. Altogether, look at these correlations. They are significant, like five of them are significant. but they are very low. In our convention in science, correlation below 2.20 is still weak. So it's, yeah, we do have relationship with the big five, but it's not really giving a lot of signal. But that's, I'm providing the interpretation, because it's important to understand the relationship to leadership. So ambition is related, adjustment is related, because it's the opposite of neuroticism, and as we know, it was shown, neuroticism decreases test performance. And now inquisitive and learning approach, when we separate them, when we separate, oh, I want to go to museum, I have um, mm, I have ideas that come quickly. That doesn't mean I'm intelligent. That I go to, I very intelligent. I know of many people that just want variety, eat different things, want to experience different places. But that doesn't mean hard thinking about solving problems as in the business environment, whereas learning approach does involve that, because you actually sit down and you read and you have to solve mathematical problems, and you have to have good memory, which are qualities we need actually for success, especially in highly complex jobs. So that's with the HPI, which the HDS initially, just looking over the 11 drivers, is the same. It's very weak correlations that do not tell you there is much relationship. Um, we can summarize them this way. The first five, the moving away cluster, it's like almost like having a tunnel vision. It's, we want to hide from the problem, right? And when we hide from problems, we don't usually solve them. And you can see, especially with excitable, skeptical, and leisurely, um, the relationship is a little bit stronger. It makes total sense, especially with skeptical, right? We do not trust information, so how can we use it if we don't trust the source? And then you have diligent and dutiful. And that relationship is because they correlate with prudence. And as we know now, already know, the theory with compensatory theory, we invest more prudence or conscientiousness when we know we are not highly cognitively able. That's why the more diligent I am, maybe I'm not. I don't. I need to compensate for a lower intellectual ability. And dutiful is related in with diligent in a cluster. So it explains the relationship again. However, I want to present something more fascinating. Overall, you see there is no connection really, or it's just flimsy. It's very interesting when you combine them with actual performance. And this is based on I'll show you 4 slides, and they're based on a study that was done by our friends from Peterbury, affiliated with Hogan, as you know, and they analyzed data from 202 leaders across various industries. They were all managers, high-level managers, executives, mostly mid-level managers. So think about director level. And they had ratings of people's capability from their managers, and they had people's HBRI scores, and they had their personality. So all the ingredients we want to see actually how they interact. And as you can see, for example, for excitable, the highest capability is when you have high business reasoning, so highly intelligent, highly excitable. But you have higher capability with low excitable too. So um, we don't need to turn intelligence into a fetish and say, oh, we always want high, high. because as we know, the derailers come with their um, they come with some potential risks. So in this case, if a person can be consistently passionate and energetic, which are qualities of highly excitable people, that would be great. That person is cognitively able and just starts projects, but and excited working with new people. But think what will happen eventually if they are stressed, and if they think that if they don't manage well, they will start getting disappointed quickly from people, starting too many projects and not finishing them. So this highest capability is not gonna be sustainable. You have to manage the derailer. You cannot manage your reasoning. It's most like it's set. It won't change, but you can manage the personality. And so let's say with skeptical, it's different picture. It seems like whether you're low or highly skeptical, you will have high business, you have high capability with higher intelligence, which which is which is good. There is a great story for both ends, but each of them has to watch out for its own relatedness to the job. Because again, you can be low skeptical, highly intelligent, but what if you are in a science role or analytical role where you have to be more skeptical, not to trust the data? It's good to be not um, trusting in such a job. So this is again general across managerial jobs, but always think about the context of the job to appraise these connections. Now with imaginative, I selected this one because it's similar to this but in different way. In imaginative, seems like it doesn't matter. You don't have highest capability with any combination. You just have higher capability. So this suggests that the most effective leaders may be those who balance creative thinking with analytical rigor. So uh, imaginative, as you know, is it's a lot of creative thinking, being lost in your ideas, um, but it does not help that much for capability, and it's comparable to low imaginative. So you might select only on for on the reasoning, um, and separate them. But interestingly, this is the last interaction I want to show you, and preempts one of the questions I might be getting from the audience. Um, Often people think if we are intelligent, if I get an intelligent candidate, very intelligent, but they are a little bit problematic, they have personality that is a little bit tricky, um, shouldn't I hire them? Mm, well, it depends again. If you think that their derailers, their profile gives you enough balances to limit the high mischievousness, it is good to hire them because you are gonna get the highest capability. They are both intelligent and they are what we know the impulsive, risky, and manipulative facets of high mischievous. Um, they can be taught positively. They are very influential. They take decisions quickly. They do not dwell too much. So they are positives in being highly mischievous. But most likely on the long run, those people will derail. It's not sustainable to be highly mischievous. But what if you have high prudence, or you have high diligence, or you have average adjustment? They will function as controllers of this high mischievous. So it's more sustainable. So you have to look at the whole profile of all the scales from HPI and HDS to make that conclusion. So not necessarily you should be getting them just because they are highly intelligent. Because again, in their work, most likely, whatever they do every day, they're judged on their personality. So you have two workers and one did a report excellent, but presents in a very aggressive way and feels very defensive with questions from the audience about their report. And you have someone who is not, the report is not so great, but answers all the questions and promotes decision making and cooperation in the team. Which candidate, sorry, which worker do you like more for the job? So again, how you express your intelligence in your personality is probably more important long term for your career. But cognitive ability, so you should be clear for you by now that is like a buffer for the derailers, and it's the truth other both ways. But in general, the goodness of cognitive ability intelligence is help us to accumulate more job knowledge. So it's easier to train such people um, because they quickly learn facts on the job. Intelligence help us think about connections, and hopefully, if you are interpersonally sensitive and not bold so much, you are gonna make connections between what I say and how the other person would feel. So that's what, emotional intelligence, as we know, is very important for leadership success. And also, it will help us think creatively how to manage our derailers. When is some intelligent people will be like, "Am I not getting too risky with saying that? What will happen if I do that?" So you have to think about the consequences of your actions. So you have to imagine them. So that's related with intelligence. And now, optimally predicting job performance. I want to show you an example why it's not so clear. Should we use cognitive intelligence or personality? No, we should use both. So if you have two manager jobs, we have a computer IT managers and administrative managers. This is from the ONET, which is a database maintained by the US government about hundreds of thousands of jobs, and they're rated in their tasks. And these ratings are from 1 to 100 based on the importance of the task for the job. So as you can see, for computer IT managers, you have a lot of tasks related to mathematical reasoning, like number facility, mathematical reasoning. They are above 50% of importance. You have information ordering. So you have the same tasks as administrative managers, but the percentages are different, as you can see. For administrative managers, only the first three are above 50, but for computer information managers, all of them are at 50 or more. So it seems like, and it's close to like what we would think, computer IT managers should be mathematically and quantitatively intelligent, whereas administrative managers may be qualitative because the deductive and inductive reasoning are whether I can make conclusions from information or when I can make mm, mm, inference from some general principle, which is the deductive reasoning. So when you get the report, and this is what I was going to show you, the report of the HBRI, when you get people to place them on the four quadrants of type of thinker, depending on their qualitative or quantitative ability. Let's say you get the computer IT manager as analytic thinker. So it seems like great. They are highly quantitative. This candidate is mathematically able. They can um, see the um, uh, they see the little steps in solving problems, um, and they are really like surgeons. They want to solve these little steps and procedures, follow the procedures. However, they don't see the big picture. And you put the administrative managers in contextual thinker. Yes, they don't need to be so mathematically capable, but it turns out this candidate is highly qualitative, high qualitative intelligence. So mm, and they see quickly the associations between things. So it seems like they are great. You have two managers placed in their strengths. Um, think about administrative managers. They have to see associations between a lot of procedures. That's what administration is. They have to make um, quickly decisions based on these connections and help people resolve a problem, administrative problem. However, that's not enough. If you not think about personality, because again, intelligence, um, mm, how to coach intelligence. You cannot change really where people will place on the grid. It's very difficult to change cognitive abilities. Like if you are not great in math in high school, you probably won't be great in math in your 30s or 40s. But what you can do is uh, eh, you can mm, you can be coach on your personality, how to use the weaknesses, the strengths and the weaknesses in your favor of your cognitive abilities. So the administrative manager should know that they're contextual thinker, so they identify problems but ignore the obstacles to their solution. So they ignore the detailed steps. So the analytical thinker is overemphasizing detailed steps, whereas the contextual is not. So by getting this feedback and by them knowing their personality scores and being coached on them, they can manage actually the intelligence. The administrative manager has to watch out more for the details and all the procedures that can go wrong, whereas the IT manager has to be more thinking about the bigger picture because they just become too focused on the solution but maybe that solution will involve too many resources. It's not practical. um, so they might have to solve the question in a faster way without so much analysis. That happens all the time with IT, the computer scientists, overcomplicating a solution. You know what I'm talking about. So optimizing cognitive ability and personality in general, it helps us to understand better the applicant pool. So without having one score like the IQ, we have several scores, quantitative and qualitative reasoning. And for each job, we have a perfect profile, but we also uh, combine it with the profile of personality, and we can see this candidate, although they are not exactly as high on this ability as we want them, their personality will make it make them a good worker, um, consistently producing higher output. Personality combined with intelligence especially decreases adverse impact. One of the merits of our assessments, um, especially in the US, as you know, it's important to show there is no adverse impact and personality does not show big changes between, big differences between, especially gender. It decreases investment in task training. Highly intelligent people quickly get the picture and get trained fast on the job. So you invest less resources in training them, and eventually it increases the effectiveness on the job. Now we have, and this is my last slide, we have many studies, hundreds of studies, validity studies on our assessments and on HBRI too. And in this study with 75 finance managers in leadership development for high potentials, we found that HBRI scores were related with stronger accounting, forecasting, and the HBRI was integrated in their development program, and as just to select the best candidates to develop further and invest. As you know, it's very expensive to develop managers, and so you'd better really identify the high potentials and provide to them personalized coaching. So HBRI is not just for selecting for placing in jobs, but you think about it also as an additional tool to use with the HPI and HDS and MVPI for higher up development. So my key points in the presentation: cognitive ability is misunderstood. We debunked many of the myths around that. It's not really associated with personality. There are some weak associations. There is explanation for them, but we should not expect them to associate just strongly. They independently contribute to job performance, each of them, but uh, each job has a different profile, and it always depends of the candidate's profile, the job profile, the interaction between cognitive abilities and personality, and whether all of these three align. And again, we usually say this in the end, and I'll say it again, the importance of high quality assessments. You might prefer to go to another cognitive ability test, intelligence test, but think twice, because is it normed? Does it give you really the context of business reasoning? Does it is it translated in different languages? And can it be easily combined with the personality assessments like ours, which for 45 minutes or maybe an hour to take the three assessments, you get the insight and the reliable scores that you cannot get anywhere else in the industry of personality assessment. And with that, this is the end of the presentation, and I thank you so much.